Welcome to Hoop du Jour with me, Peter Vecsey, presented by the National Basketball Retired Players Association. Jerry, welcome.
Great to see you again.
Man, great. It's an honor, as usual. We go back a long way. We're not going to talk about that. I did that with Oscar. But as long as I mentioned Oscar's name, last week we had him on, and he was saying that, you had told me over the years how much you couldn't believe that he had such a smooth transition from college to pros, and it took you said, a half a season. Tell me a little bit about that, why it took you so long, and what do you think of Oscar Robertson's game?
Well, first of all, I absolutely loved him, both as a competitor and as a teammate during our Olympic Games together. And the thing that I thought was really unique about him, Pete, as I mentioned to you many times before, is how advanced he really was. And I attribute it to probably the fact that he played against some really good competition where he grew up in Indianapolis, and being exposed to those kind of players who had a different kind of skill level than some kid from West Virginia who worked in the coal mines, and you go out and compete against. It wasn't the same level. It was more. Highly achieved players who had competed in college, and I didn't see that kind of competition at all. He had more players to learn from, but again, you have to look at him for what he was. He had great skill. He had terrific size for a backcourt player at that point in time. He was like 6'5", and I was 6'4.5". And I think his ability to play the game on both ends of the court, and particularly his leadership skills, getting the ball to people in the right time, being a play ahead all the time on the offensive end. He just had a mind that was much further progressed than myself. It wasn't close. And it really showed up to me during the Olympic Games when we had an opportunity to play together, just to see how he would get into things that the late Pete Newell, who was our coach. It was pretty fascinating, really, to watch him. And, being someone who I've always felt I've been kind of a sponge in the sense I want to soak up as much information as I can, regardless of what it might be in life. But at that time, at that point in time, I was a player trying to look to get better. And how do you get better? You watch people that that play the game in a unique way. And that's what helped me so much, playing against him. And I knew inside of myself that there was something there that had not been touched before. And instead of just going out playing the game, reacting to the speed of the game, there's so much more to that. And the players that achieve at the highest level, they think the game differently than players who are even all-star players. There's a unique group of players that have that skill. You always know what somebody's going to do. But the point is, in this game, sometimes it might not be good enough if you know what somebody's going to do, because they might catch you just a little bit off balance to be able to say defensively, if you're playing someone, they can beat you regardless of what you do defensively.
I got to stop you though, Jerry. How did you do against him once things evened out? You did guard each other, right? Many times, yeah. Right? How did you do?
Well, with me, Pete, I've always felt that as an offensive player, you have to look at what they do best. And I never felt like he was just going to blow by me, okay? But he could get to where he wanted, big, strong body, knew how to use his body, which is a gift in itself, and also a strength of players. And as you get older and more experienced, you learn how to do that. But with me, I always try to play one guy, keep him going one way, not to be able to beat you both ways. I just think that players are too good when you allow them to beat you both ways. And today it's gotten even worse because the ability of players to handle the ball, but more importantly, the Euro step, the walking steps that are walking a dog. To be honest with you,
there's a bigger exchange rate.
All of those factors.
You know what? if I could interrupt for a second, I watched the game one day last week. There was so many steps taken. I was waiting for a guy to put in for mileage. It really was just.
Well, if you look how all sports, think how all sports have changed. Okay, look at baseball. One time, a baseball pitcher would, like, the badge of honor was to pitch 9 innings, throw 120 pitches. Now they throw about 80 pitches or 85, and that's it. So people are used to strikeouts and home runs today, and that's the way the game. Specialists, it's a game of specialists.
Yeah.
And the football, no one can touch the quarterback anymore. You can't touch a wide receiver.
Well, you can't touch the ball handlers either.
Well, you can't. And so the rules. What do people go to boxing matches for? They don't go for a decision. They won't see somebody get knocked out. Why do they go to a baseball game? Again, strikeouts and home runs. I love to see guys hit home run. Even golf today, the guy that everyone's talking about, who they want to see how far Bryson DeChambeau can hit the ball. So every game has changed, and within that, obviously boundaries have to be changed. And people pay for excitement, and that's why we see these things allowed. I don't know the difference between a Euro step and a jump stop is walking. I don't get that. Why is jump stop a walking? If you just go jump and you don't move your feet, you're playing it, okay? But the other one is, I mean, I see guys carrying the ball down the floor like this, and you say to yourself, how far they have come. And it's just an evolution, I think, in all sports. There's so much information. Everyone has all this information, knowledge. I think on our coaching staffs, we might, between coaches and people or workout coaches, we probably have 14 people. And to think that one time you had maybe one coach and then one assistant coach, and today you just have all this knowledge there that these kids are coming in at such an early age, Pete, that they need help, regardless of how skilled they are. They need help to see the game in a different way, and that's why you see them have so much help.
Jerry, there's also the Hall of Fame now has about 14 presenters for each recipient.
Well, it's hard to watch. It really is. It's like what's the longest movie ever made? You go there and you say to yourself, when is this going to get over with? And obviously I'm very zealous about the Hall of Fame. I think that in some respects that I would like to see different kind of people get in the Hall of Fame, where the criterion is very much like baseball. Some years no one gets in baseball's Hall of Fame.
Right. You want me to send you my speech when I went in, Jerry, in case you missed it? You want to?
Yeah.
Jerry, let me stop you.
I mean, go ahead.
Jerry, you talked about, you learn from other people when you're growing up. You see the better player, whatever. You didn't have television in those days to watch those kind of games. Yeah. But I've always wondered how you developed the low dribble, the low last dribble being a hard dribble and then elevating. How did you learn that?
I don't know, Pete. One summer I was at West Virginia University, and I was a freshman. And before my freshman season, they got me a job. I was a water boy they were building a dam in Morgantown, West Virginia. And I was a water boy, and I couldn't even drive, but that was an adventure in itself. But I would go down in my spare time to the gym, and there's something about, dribbling the ball, and you don't have to expose the ball in front of a defender. It's up here quickly till you can shoot the ball. And I actually had scratched my face. To this day, I still have a scratch by trying to keep it so close to my body so you didn't expose the ball so much. And I felt it also, even transitioning to the NBA, it really helped a lot because there's a lot of hand checking going on with both hands. So you almost feel like you had a steering wheel on you. But what it helped me with much better balance on shooting the ball. And if you're drifting all over the place, unless you're an extraordinary shooter, you're not going to be able to convert them, particularly when you got people bumping you. And
So you just learned
that
it.
really helped me a lot. It
You learned,
also
yeah.
helped me.
I mean, it was unstoppable shot. But Jerry, you mentioned your nose, and there was a game in Kentucky where they broke your nose at least once, maybe twice. And then I looked it up. That was against Adolph Rupp's team. And do you know how many times your nose was broken in your career?
I do, Pete. Unfortunately, 9 times.
9 times.
Once in college, and University of Kentucky, and that the first time was a horrible, horrible break. Pete, I basically didn't have a nose. I really didn't. It would just smash flat. And I was getting ready to jump and go after a rebound, and this guy mistimed his jump, and he came down, and his elbow hit me right on top of my nose, and I played the rest of the game. We won the game, and and there's always some stories behind these things, Pete. And one of the really kind of amazing stories with this was that, as I say, I've bled so much during the course of the game. It was crazy. About 10 years ago, I get a package. And again, my God, that was in 1958, I believe, or 59. And I get a package in the mail, and it was from a kid who was a ball boy, that he had kept this towel. It says Kentucky on it and has all this blood. He said, I thought you might want to, it was almost cryptic to get.
He could have gotten a lot of money for that.
Oh, well, today everyone sells anything. I'm not
Right,
into stuff
right.
like that.
So 9 times, Jerry. I mean, what is it about your nose that people were accidentally on purpose hitting with elbows?
Well, Pete, I'll tell you what was really weird. I had the same person who played for the New York Knicks do a run, actually trying to steal balls is what it was from. 2 times in 6 weeks, my nose was broken by Willis Reed.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't deliberate. It wasn't deliberate. You know what's deliberate and what's not.
Right.
And almost the same way. And as I say, I was an aggressive defender, particularly when there was loose balls and people dribbling, and I had long arms and quick hands, and I can get a lot of steals and anticipate steals. And sometimes when you're going like that, you're reaching, and your nose is exposed, and people play in this league forever and never get a broken nose.
Never, exactly. Yeah.
And it was not fun, Pete, in the sense that scar tissue bleeds a lot more. But I never missed a game from a broken nose.
I never
missed one game.
I never reached for a loose ball. Loose woman, yes, but not a loose ball.
Right. Well,
sorry, Jerry. Sorry.
It was just, it was really, really funny in the sense that you try like crazy to keep out of harm's way, so to speak. It doesn't work that way. And again, particularly if you just don't stand around and you're aggressive, but it was not fun. I mean, I had times when playing a game, I'll never forget, we played a game in San Diego, and I had white shoes on, and Pete, I mean, they were red after the game. I brought my nose broken in the first half, and I'll never forget that. And coming over in timeouts, and I know it's horrible to talk about, but blood was just gushing out of your mouth, and they pack your nose, but you still bleed so much. And it didn't bother me, but the guys that were my teammates, they just got completely away from me. And that would never happen today, because they wouldn't let you play because of all the protocols in place today with blood. And but there's something about it. It used to make me mad.
Jerry, let's move on to a worse memory.
I have a lot of those, Pete.
A worse memory. The Celtics. Now, I remember, when I did an article with your son back when you were getting the statue in L.A. outside Staples. He said to me that you would not allow the kids to wear anything green in the house, and that you hated the Lakers, hated the Celtics forever. Do you still hate the Celtics?
Oh gosh, no. That was, I think, probably people I used to kid
Be honest, Jerry. Come on.
No, I'm going to be honest with Pete. I don't try to hide anything that's not,
All right.
not true. But no, it was more of a, making fun of it. But I don't think anyone's ever seen me wear green. I'll say that. But the green has changed so much in Boston. It changes all the time now. And as the NBA, I think they're trying to change the colors of green and blue and everything. And so everyone looks like a rainbow when they play today. But
Right.
no, as I say, I had great respect for the Celtics, and
But
particularly
they ruined your life for a long, long time. I mean, you went to the finals, what, six times?
Six times in the
yeah,
'60s.
uh,
Three of them went to Game 7.
yeah, and
And
it was. I think as anyone, regardless of what you do, when you wrote, you took pride if what you were writing was hopefully the truth. And and when you're a player, excuse me, when you're a player, the thing that matters most at the end of the day, it's not about what you do. It's about winning. Who do you play for? You play for the fans. You play for your teammates, and you play for the uniform on your back. That's who you play for. But honestly, I played for the fans, because when we first started in Los Angeles, we had to build a fan base, and they were vociferous. And every year when we came to Celtic, it was almost like the same story. Lakers get to Game 7, lose Game 7. It was like torture. And for me, it was twice in the height of my career. I didn't, Pete, I wanted to quit. I really did. It was that painful. I remember one night after a particularly horrible loss, I think 1969, when, regardless of what anyone says, we had the best team. We did not win. We had the best team. And it was like, I got in my car. I just took off driving. I took off. I got home about probably 5 o'clock in the morning after the game. It was just so painful no matter how you played, no matter how the late Elgin Baylor played, it wasn't enough. And that was time truly. I didn't know if I could take this anymore. It was your worst nightmare to go in the arena, and I was so embarrassed. They had all these balloons hung in the end zone, and everyone said that's what motivated the Celtics. Well, I don't believe that for a second. The best team did not win. Period. Right. It did not win.
Do you mind if we go over that game a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Because it was a very, very controversial game. That was the game where Butch Van Bredikoff did not reinsert Will Chamberlain. I believe, Frank, get me with the numbers here. He went out with
about 5 and change to go. I think he hurt an ankle getting a rebound. And with about Mel Counts came in. Then
you were down 7 when he left.
Yeah. And then with about 2 and change to go, we said, I'm good to go. And what was the quote of Butch? We're doing okay without you, or something along those lines?
Right.
I had no clue. I did not hear any of this. And one of the things I said when he went out, I didn't know if it was major or anything at all. And I'm never one to question if somebody's hurt, they're hurt. Okay. And it got very controversial. I think it was well known that Pete and Butch and Wilt did not really care for each other. And it was, you don't try to think about that in the heart of the game. You're just trying to get back in the ball game. And I did not hear that conversation at all.
Right.
I was shocked when I heard it, but and that was the last game Butch Van Bredikoff ever coached the Lakers.
Right. The owner, Jack Ken Cook, fired him soon after.
Yeah,
and you guys had such a chance to win that game. I think you had 3 chances at the end to take the lead, and there was either a turnover or a missed shot. And Mel Counts missed a shot at the end too, not in the last seconds, but he missed a shot down the stretch. I think Russell blocked it. So I'm saying, like, Wilt and Russell both had 5 fouls when Wilt went out. I mean, the game was there to be had, and Wilt sat. Pretty
Well,
sad.
I would say it's one of those stories that I wish I could talk about because I don't know. I mean, they're sitting over there on the bench. I didn't hear any of the dialogue at all. And after the game, we didn't have the same volume of writers. We had quite a few then, but the media had just really started to get into professional basketball, and I'm talking about from all over the country, and even people out of the country would start to have an interest in it. And when this was over with, I had a number of writers come to me and say, "What do you think about this?" Well, how in the world can first question after you just lose? I mean, a gripping, ugly ending to a season. How can you want to even comment on that
Right.
when you haven't even heard it? And I've had a lot of people say to me, "Oh, you knew what was going on. You knew what was going on." I knew they didn't like each other, care for each other. I knew that.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it was like, don't bother me. Don't bother anyone. We lost, and it was just awful. It was awful, and I could see the gleam in the Celtics' eyes, and Bill was the coach of the team at that point in time. So a player coach who was an incredible player and a great, great person. They won again. It just was not fun.
Let's jump to a better time for you. In your 14-year career, you went to the finals 9 times, and then in 1972, you won your championship. Could you tell us something about that 33-game winning streak, starting with Elgin Baylor retiring X amount of games into the season, early in the season? My first question is, did Bill Sharman tell him that if he didn't retire, that he was going to replace him in the starting lineup with Jim McMillan, or did just Elgin know that he couldn't compete at that level anymore?
Honestly, I don't know anything what happened. Okay, I go to practice one day, and we were I think our record was 5-3 or
Yeah,
or 5-4. What I don't know.
Yeah.
And we had just been playing not very well. And Bill, during the training camp, Bill had said to me, he said, "I want you to lead the league in assists." And I said, "Well," I said, whatever. I said, "I just want to win." And he says, "Well, we need, we want to run more." And everyone looked at us and said, "We're an older team that you couldn't run." Well, that's not really true. You have to run smart and you have to run effectively.
Right.
And it's not just running up and down the court and firing shots up around. It has to be organized. And so I go to practice that day and no Elgin, and somebody said Elgin's retiring. And that's the first thing I knew about. And the first thing I said, well, I want to find out what's going on here. Tried to get in touch with Elgin, and I wasn't able to. But I did get in touch with him the next day, and he said that he had retired. And the only thing I'd heard that they had called the owner, late owner was Jack Cook. They called him in the office and they'd asked him to retire. And because he was struggling, Pete, with, he had 2 horrible injuries, leg injuries. And the way he played, he needed to be at full strength the way he played, because he was a magnificent player, a great teammate, and a better person. But it was probably the shock of my life to go in the locker room and not see him after being there with him for 12 years, to not seeing him in the locker room. It was like I lost my best friend. I lost someone I cared about personally. But you're obligated to play the game. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't sit down and dwell on it. You go play.
So you started that winning streak. You started
Yeah.
against Baltimore, I believe, and so 33 in a row. And I'm wondering, all these years again, how, Sharman never gets enough credit in my mind for anything that he's ever done. I love the guy.
He was great.
How I remember you and I sitting down with him in LA back in the day. I had a great couple of days with him. But how did he motivate you guys to stay mentally into it? Practices, tell me something he did differently. Well, one thing I heard is that he would put Wilt on the second team.
Well, in practices, he would mix up things in practices. He really would. And so I think the thing I thought was very interesting is that Wilt's team never won a game in practice. Okay.
Oh boy.
It wasn't because he probably didn't even care. Okay. Practice then for him, everyone talks about minutes played. Pete, he's the only guy that ever played more minutes in a season that was ever scheduled. He played every minute of every game, and that included overtime.
Right.
So you didn't even need a backup center, but he never got hurt.
Right.
But no, Bill did stuff like that. He would. We had a plus minus system that was the craziest thing I've ever seen. And at that point in time, I was making a lot more than when I was a rookie, and only because of being an all-pro player, all defensive player, and stuff like that. That's how you get paid, okay, for your performance. And Wilt, of course, had all these accolades, and Bill asked him to be a rebounder and a defender. So he didn't want either one of us shooting the ball. He was smart.
Right.
And, but
let Goodrich shoot and Jim McMillan.
Yeah, right. And we put Jimmy McMillan in the lineup, and Jimmy was another fantastic person.
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed like all of a sudden we moved the ball better. We became better defensively. We ran more, but we had the best rebounding in the team by a lot. And we could win any kind of a game, Pete. And at that time, some of these games were really physical. I mean, very physical. You didn't want to go shoot a layup, I'll tell you that. And then we could run a wide open game. I think we averaged our point spread differential, I believe, was almost 14 a game. And Pete, there's a lot of games we didn't even play the last quarter. So it could have been gigantic during that period of time. We had games where I remember one game when we got hung up in Chicago, and Wilt got the police took him off the plane because we'd been on this one airplane going to Philadelphia. We played that night in Chicago. Go to the airport. We got out there at our plane was supposed to leave at 7:30. Now remember, it's an hour's time difference in Philadelphia, and we get out there and we're sitting on the plane, and they mechanical. It'll be 45 minutes or something like that, and then this just kept going on and on and on. All of a sudden, it's about 1:30, 2 o'clock, and we could have gone on 3 other planes and got there at a reasonable time. We stayed, and so Wilt said something to someone come on the plane. He said, if I had a gun, I'd shoot someone. They took him off the airplane. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
And all of us were kind of laughing, but we're so tired. We finally get to Philadelphia. Remember, an hour's time difference. We finally get to Philadelphia at 5 something. The game is 7 or 7:30. We didn't even go to the hotel. No one had anything to eat except possible because they wouldn't let you off the airplane. They just kept you on the airplane the whole time. And we get out there. We were right to the arena, and everyone was laughing because Wilt wasn't there, and he's not going to be here tonight, right? Well, about 5 minutes to 7, he walks in. He starts bitching about, you guys just left me in Chicago. And everyone said, well, we didn't leave you in Chicago. The police kept you there.
Right.
So
did they give him back his gun?
He dressed in his typical fashion, which was amazing to watch how he dressed. It was amazing, but he was so mad. I can't tell you how mad he was. He just kept saying how mad he was. All of us, we left it there. The first quarter, we were in this. I think we won about 19 straight games. We're behind the first quarter by about 18 points. Philadelphia had a pretty good team, but we had this system: $5 for every rebound, $5 for every block shot, $5 for every steal, and $5 for every assist. And in this game, we end up winning this game by about 30, and hardly played any of the last quarter. It was like an avalanche going down a mountain.
Who paid for that? Sharman paid that?
Yeah, he at the time the team would pay it. You can't do that because of an inducement.
Right.
But the most important thing wasn't your paycheck. How much money did you make from all these steals, rebound, assists, and stuff like that? But there were also turnovers were a $5 fine. But in that one game, he had 16 block shots and 35 rebounds. And I had my biggest payday. I had like 18 assists and about 9 steals in that game. But a guy would go by the bench if you deflected a ball and somebody else picked it up, guys would run down the court like this, a half, right? So $2.50. But it served its purpose, and I led the league in assists. Chamberlain led the league in rebounding. And we won the championship. It was like a dream come true.
Yeah, Sharman knew what he was doing, wasn't he? Had to motivate
Well, he was simple, Pete. He wasn't one of these really complex coaches. The thing he wanted people to compete. And some people compete at a higher level, but he just had a way with people. And I used to tell him all the time, because he would, he asked me before the season started, he says, do you want to, I have a question. I want Wilt to be the captain. I said, I've never been the captain since I've been on the Laker team anyway. And I played, of course, with Elgin. He was the captain of the team. And he was almost like this, saying that would offend me. I said, why would that offend me? I don't care if I'm captain. That made no difference.
Right.
But I guess it's like being an honor guard.
Right.
I think if I can interrupt, I think the burning question, Jerry, is with all the $5 here and $5 there, are you sure you were getting an honest count?
Oh my God! After the game, Wilt would go over the guy, and Wilt kept track of everything. How many rebounds and blocks up? He made him go back. And look at films. And you didn't give me enough rebounds.
Jerry, I heard that when he led the league in assists, I think Frank McGuire was the coach then, but he led the league in assists, and that he would stand, with his back to the basket, and they give him the ball, and then they cut off of him, and as they cut off of him, he would say their shooting percentages. So if you had a lousy shooting percentage, you pull the ball back.
He was a real character. He was.
I love Will.
He was a real character. And later, a lot of people, look around and they try to find reasons to, I guess, for some people to really get on him for nothing. He was just complex. Okay, I would be on elevators with him, and people, oh man, how's the weather up there? And I've heard of stories, not him, but another player spit on someone's head and it's raining, they said. But I had a lot of fun with him after games. A lot of night we would be in a room, have dinner in a room. And what was really interesting, one night we were doing this in Detroit, and so it was my time to pay. And so he ordered 3 entrees, okay? And but he was a character. He really was. I had a lot of fun
dessert. That's what I want to know.
I had a lot of fun with him. A lot of fun.
Jerry, you retired at what age? 34?
Just getting ready to turn 35. Yeah, right.
Getting ready. So we looked it up, and you had an exhibition game where you scored 38 points, and the next day you retired. Jerry, what? What was that about?
Well, it's really weird, Pete. The year before, I had gotten you didn't have agents or anything, and I wanted to renegotiate my contract. And the owner said basically no. And I said to him, I said, look, I've done everything you asked of me. I said, I play when I'm hurt. I said, I play when doctors give me shots. I said, there's nothing I don't play with. I said, you asked me to lead the league, lead this team in scoring and assist, and you also want me to guard the best offensive player. And I said, I think that I should make more money. And it's the only really time that I had where I felt I had any leverage. And he basically said no. And so I'll never forget that day.
So this is Jack Kent Cook. Just so
Jack
we
Kent Cook. I'll never forget that day. Larry Fleischer was trying to help me. And so they asked me, Larry asked me, would I be willing to go to Phoenix and play? I said, I'd rather finish my career with the Lakers, but let me think about it. So I come to find out that they were maybe possibly thinking about trading Charlie Scott for me. And so I said, no, I'm going to go back and play. And the 28th game that season, we're playing a game in Houston. They had an old tartan court down there. And I tore a groin muscle. And I could not feed. I couldn't sleep for 3 months. I had to sleep with 2 pillows between my legs. I never had anything like that before. And it was an injury, I think, that like offensive lineman, defensive lineman, when you get hit and you're torqued and your body stops abruptly. And it was explained to me that doctor is a football injury. So they sent me all over the country to try to find some solution to it. But there wasn't a lot of blood. It's a really small little area there. And so I missed basically the rest of the season until the playoffs. I never practiced once in that period of time. I was doing some light jogging and I would do some shooting where, just straightforward shooting. No running, hard running at all. So they basically said to me, we really want you to play. I said, well, the only way I'm going to be able to play is to be shot up. And before the game, they gave me like 6 shots in my groin area, 6, which helped the pain. And so we started playing the game and against the Milwaukee Bucks. And I made a last-second shot to win the game, but I absolutely couldn't do anything. But I did make a shot to win the game. And so everyone was happy. I'm back playing. We've had a day off, and the day off, I could hardly walk. It hurt so bad. And so they were going through practice the next day. I could not practice. I couldn't. I would shoot a little bit. That hurt. And so then the next game comes. They do the same thing. I could not play. It just no one will experience that kind of pain. I couldn't play. And so after the season over, I heard from a lot of people that he said that I didn't want to play because he wouldn't pay me. And that really was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. But I did work out really hard that summer, Pete, and I ran a lot of hills. The late coach at UCLA by the name of Jim Bush, he was a famous track coach over there. He had me to start running hills, down the hill and particularly back up the hill. And so I would do that a lot. I lost a lot of weight at that point in time, and I felt really good. I did feel really good, but I knew that this was not going to work. I knew I was going to get hurt. And Will Chamberlain was no longer there. Elgin Baylor was no longer there. And it was going to be me and a bunch of young guys. So we played that exhibition game against Portland and Bill Walton. And after the game, Pete, I told the GM, whose name was Fred Childs, he was my college coach and also my professional coach when I first started. Mm-hmm. I told him, and Bill Sharman, the coach, I said, I need to talk to you guys. And it was really strange because I used to sit in the locker room. I can take my hand, water would just drip off of it. So much adrenaline going through your body. And before the game, no water was dripping off my hand. It was only an exhibition game, but even exhibition games, I was like that. And after the game, I said, I can't do this anymore. I mean, it was like somebody said, don't do this. And I believed a lot of players play past their time. And I wasn't going to do it. Mm-hmm. I had too much pride in how I played. and how much I cared about winning and how much I cared about how I played, because people I knew would pay to come see me play. I knew that.
Right.
I didn't want to think it, but I knew it. And Pete, I would have been the first $1 million player in professional basketball. First $1 million player.
That year?
Yep. And I said no.
Hmm.
I said no.
So that leads to my next question, Jerry, is that so you did not have a good relationship with Jack Kent Cooke at the end, that's for sure. Why then did you accept to be the coach for Jack Kent Cooke?
Well, Pete, I took basically 3 years off, and Bill's teams were not having very much success, and they wanted to hire the late Jerry Tarkanian, and they met with him twice, I know. And then the guy who represented him, they found him dead in the backseat of a car here in Los Angeles. I mean, a horrible, horrible story.
Well, he was skimming money from the. That's what happens.
Well, I didn't know that, but anyway, Jerry went back and coached at UNLV and didn't leave, and so they called me about it, and I was really bored. All I was doing was playing golf, and I was just too young to just sit and relax.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, find something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I've never worked a day in my life. I've been blessed in the sense that there's something about the bouncing ball, the noise in a gym, being around other athletes that was appealing to me. And the first year that I was involved, I asked him, because I didn't know anything about coaching. The only thing I knew was forget offense. Offense was easy. I wouldn't know how to run a scheme, a system, or anything. But defensively, I had an idea what we needed to do if we're going to be an effective team. So basically the same thing that Bill had. I took them and I told Abdul-Jabbar, I said, you're going to be the complete focus of this team, complete focus. And we're going to run an offense designed for you, but we're going to make it easier for you defensively. I just believe you isolate people on one side of the court, don't let them use the other side of the court. And it was easier to help that way. You didn't, guys won't get backdoored out of plays like that. And my first year, we won more games than any team in the league, and all it was done. And I'm not saying it was me, but my two assistant coaches, the late Sam Allback, who I loved, and the late Jack McCloskey, who I loved, they were just great guys, and they knew they were nursing an emotional child. That's what they were doing.
That's you?
Yes, and even then, and still today, I guess. But I am emotional, and I care about winning.
I like nursing, though.
Well, I care about winning a lot, and even today, and my involvement with Clipper, I really care about winning, and I care about how athletes are doing. I like them put in the best possible situation, and particularly if they're good guys, they got to be good guys, and they got to have passion to play the game. But it's probably one of the happiest times I've ever had in my life to know that I had two guys who understood this very emotional person who was not qualified to be a coach because of his emotions. Mm-hmm. And during my 3 years here in Los Angeles as a coach, I think we won almost at a 60% pace, basically with the same team as Bill had, only because we changed from Bill wanted an upscale game, and his team simply wasn't qualified to do that. And then Bill had also lost his voice, which made it even more difficult to communicate. But after my second year,
Jerry, let's stick to that first. Let's stick to the first year. That was 76, 77.
Was it? Yeah, I think
you lost to the Blazers that year.
Yes, who won the championship?
Okay, but you owned them during this regular season, correct?
Yes.
And then
what happened?
Lucius Allen got hurt.
We lose Kermit Washington, who was our answer and more than an answer for Maurice Lucas. Maurice Lucas would bully all our other players. He wasn't going to do that with Kermit.
Right.
And he got hurt, and then also Lucius Allen got hurt. And we played all these kind of heartbreaking close games. And it just took its toll on me, to be honest with you. I couldn't accept some of the things I was seeing. But Pete, like a year later, as you're well aware, the league was really having a lot of problems with the players. It was an era, a drug era. Let's face it, it was, and the league was aware of it. And it just, at times we would go on the road, and I would see the characters come to the hotel and hang around, and I couldn't take it. Okay, I could not take that.
Right.
I've never been a real dissipator. I don't smoke. I'm never marijuana, no drugs, not even much of a drinker, to be honest with you. And for some reason, I was going through a divorce. The way I treated some of our players, even to this day, I'm embarrassed. I mean, really embarrassed. And I've told the ones that were around. I've apologized to every one of them that I was not fit to be a coach, and I said I'm ashamed of what my behavior was like.
Really?
And honestly, it was a relief to do that for me,
Mm-hmm.
because that's not who I am as a person. I try to treat everyone nice, but it was just all the stuff I was going through personally,
Right.
and also knowing I was not helping these players grow. I was not. Our drafts were horrible at that point in time. We weren't getting any help for Kareem. And I said to him one day, I said, Kareem, I said, I've watched you play. If you would play harder, can you imagine me telling Abdul Jabbar that he should play harder? I said to myself after my third year, when I was not going to do this anymore, and Jerry Buss, who had bought the team, wanted me to coach more, and I could not do it. There's no way. It wouldn't have been fair to the players.
Right.
And Abdul Jabbar made the game look so darn easy, Pete, that you did not realize what he was doing. You did not. And he played emotionless, but he was people talk about great players.
Right.
My goodness, today some of these centers are playing today, everyone wants to play from basket.
Right.
I would love to see somebody try to guard him. There's no way.
Jerry, let me back up once. Let me back up a second, though. I think I'm correcting you, but Kermit Washington that year, wasn't that the year that he got into the fight with Rudy Tomjanovich? He didn't get hurt. You guys, I mean, your owner basically distanced himself from Kermit and then cut him or traded him, got rid of him. I don't think
into the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, never practiced with you again. So again, you were without Kermit and Lucius Allen, and the Blazers.
Well, they were good. They were good,
but they kind of lucked into that because I think you were undefeated against them during the regular season.
Well, again, Pete, I don't say anyone lucks into something, but circumstances certainly help.
I'll say it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But I think probably the crowning blow was when Kermit got into the fight with Rudy, and what people said about him was just awful. And I wanted an aggressive team, and we had an aggressive team, but never thinking the person who really started that wasn't Kermit, was not
Kevin Cooner.
Absolutely, you're absolutely correct.
Right.
No one ever said anything about that.
Right.
But that was the final straw for me as a coach. Everyone was so critical of him and calling him a thug. He was a nice person, a really nice person. And
Gary, I know that for a fact because his PR guy, Mark Splaver, when he was in college, used to tell me about Kermit. And in my career, I'm only really disappointed with myself for 2 columns I ever wrote. And one was after that fight where, Rudy came running at him and he didn't know, and he threw the punch. And I was totally out of line with that column I wrote. Kind of what you're saying, I was one of those guys. And the other one was on a Marvin Webster column that I went after his wife in the column. Not a good idea.
Well, you really know how to be a peacemaker, don't you?
Yeah, he's a Nobel Prize waiting to happen, isn't he? Jerry, if I can interject for a quick second, 3 years as coaching, how did you see the game differently on the sidelines than when you saw it when you ran the offense?
You know, you can't teach instincts, okay? Sometimes you have to put guys on X's. That doesn't work. You have to be adaptable. And you also have to have players that complement each other. We didn't have enough players to complement Abdul-Jabbar, period. We did not. And today, I think Kareem, because I've talked to him about it a lot, and we still are very friendly. We speak some, not every day, but we speak a few times during the course of a year. And I see a different man, and I think he sees that I'm a different person. He's really bright. When you have someone like this who's an intellectual in the locker room, I used to watch him. He'd be reading these books that other players not going to. They might be reading comic books when they're that age. He would read things that were so important, and we got into talking about reading books. And frankly, he expanded my reading habits a lot, which I'm thankful for to this day. But he was one of those amazing players that if you watched him play, it was effortless, absolutely effortless. And it made me feel good that my relationship with him, he probably was disgusted with me. My relationship with him changed for a positive because I was very honest with him, and also the other players I was very honest with.
Well, maybe you could talk to him about doing this podcast. He turned me down, but moving.
Well, you better call Deborah.
Yeah, no, I better not. But I've known Kareem since he was at St. Jude's in the 8th grade. He came to my high school to try out for a scholarship, and the coach turned him down because Kareem wanted to be driven to school every day. So he went to Powell Memorial instead of Archbishop.
I met him when I was a player and when he was in high school, and we talked when he was in high school.
Really. So Jerry, let's go ahead to 1981 when Westhead won a championship, and then was fired X amount of games, kind of like Baylor retiring. A 5-game winning streak, he was fired, and Jerry Buss wanted you to coach the team. And I know it's been talked about this whole how it happened, but I think it's so intriguing the way it happened. So he wanted you to coach it, and Pat Riley was going to be your assistant. He was Westhead's assistant. Tell me how that worked out. How did you get out of not coaching?
Well, we agreed to sort of do this, and I knew it was something I shouldn't have done. Okay. And so we go to the press conference, and I said that right in the middle of the press conference, they asked me about, and I said, I'm going to be, and Pat's going to make the decisions, and I'm going to be here with him, but I'm not going to be the head coach. I'm going to be here with him. And I kind of looked out of the corner of my eye, and the late Jerry Buss, who I absolutely love, I think he looked at me like, "Are you crazy?" But again, it's the best thing I ever did. And also, I think for Pat, of course, it gave him a start, and he, he was very successful and been very successful in all the endeavors he's been involved in basketball. But he was where Pat was much more driven. Practices were very difficult. And it got to the point that once the season was over, and I've talked to Pat, it's not something I don't feel comfortable talking about. I talked to Pat a number of times. I said, Pat, my gosh, we're late in the year. And I said, we got the best record in basketball. We don't need to be killing these guys. But that was Pat's personality. He played the same way. And when he went with the Knicks, I think you saw a team there that was tough as nails, but they had the right kind of people. But his best, when he was here in Los Angeles, we had, I think, the greatest basketball teams I've ever seen in the 80s. I think they were the best, and people say, oh, they couldn't play the game. No, they would play and dominate. It was an all-star team.
Right.
An all-star team. And big, score, defend. Our bench was terrific. A lot of really great players, and they fit together. And Pat had them really organized, and it was fun to watch. Going to games, and instead of wondering what kind of effort you're going to see with the people we had, Irvin Johnson, kind of the leader of the band, we were going to win, and particularly late in the year, we were going to win.
Jerry, why did Westhead get fired? Was it Magic who wanted him fired? Was it Bus who wanted to up tempo the offense? What was it? I mean, he took a lot of grief, Magic, from me for sure.
Well, I think, Irvin loves to play the game. Okay, he loved to play, and I think at times that watching our team, we became so mechanical, and this team wasn't built to be mechanical. And I think what was really amazing about that, once Paul left, this team really took off in terms of you could see the enthusiasm return. Was that Paul? I don't know. Was it the way we played? I will never know. Okay, because I wasn't even aware until somebody told me that Jerry Buss didn't tell me. I heard it a little bit later, and I went, "Oh my gosh, what's going on here?" And this is when it led to Pat and me being involved. But what was ironic about it is when Paul left there, he changed the way he played, and he had the highest scoring.
The way he coached, yeah.
Yes, he changed the way he coached.
Yeah.
And he had one saying that when this is all over, they asked him questions, and he was very bright himself, very bright. And he said, "The almond tree bears its fruit in silence." And he never really said anything. He didn't try to defend.
Right.
He wasn't negative about it, but it had to be really hurtful for him. And obviously it was shocking that it happened the way it happened.
Very, very interesting, though, that you said before that you told Kareem when you took over as coach that you wanted to make him the focal point of the offense.
Yes.
Now, Westhead still made Kareem the offensive focal point, but Magic wanted to go up speed. As you're saying, maybe that was the way to go at that time. Kareem bought into it, and there was no problem. But just interesting that he was doing what you were doing.
Yes. Well, it's just almost the opposite, in the sense that we didn't have a point guard or equivalent of a leader. We really didn't. It was just a cohesive bunch of guys that were very mechanical in the way we played.
Right.
If you have someone like Irvin Johnson around, you don't have to be mechanical. He is a genius with the ball in his hand.
Right.
And the way he played the game, the leadership, the excitement that he brought, and he played every night. I mean, my gosh, he competed every night. And a lot of times you go out on the court, and some nights some guys don't feel like they have it. But somebody like him uplifted everyone. If you have one of those players on your team who has a lot of energy, I watched Russell Westbrook today. My goodness, this guy has energy like crazy. And some of the things he's doing for someone his size, he doesn't shoot the ball great. But my God, his effort, is there anyone gives any more effort than him? If they are, I want to see one. I have never seen one give the kind of effort that Russell does.
Yeah, I had a dinner with Kobe right before I retired when I was in LA, and he brought up Westbrook's name as his favorite player, which is not surprising at all because of the way Kobe played. But he brought it up, and he said that to me. But let's go to Kobe, okay? Now you're the president or the general manager of the Lakers. Please explain to me how you were able to maneuver getting Shaq and Kobe at the same time. And I'll just say one thing, Vancouver, I know you were trying to get cap money from them by giving them players, and they turned you down. Finally, you did it. You're smiling. You gave them Peeler and Lynch, and you got 2 number 2 picks.
Well,
how did that happen?
Pete, probably, everyone is anxious, and particularly all the big markets and people who have a lot of money to spend. And frankly, the free agent markets was, remember the Kansas City Royals? They developed all the players for the New York Yankees.
That's right. That was their farm.
It was their farm system. It was their farm system. And these small market teams really, frankly, probably have no chance of attracting a free agent unless some of the bigger markets want them. And unfortunately, it's the horrible part of all sports, because agents today and players today, they're so into all the social media stuff, which brings an enormous amount of potential for future earnings as a pitch man for some companies. And so agents know how valuable just being in the right city really is. So at that point in time, it was a weird year. There's kind of a lockout year. You really couldn't talk to free agents, but probably the greatest year ever for free agents we have ever seen in this league. We may not see one like that again. You look at the players who are out there, my goodness. And somebody said, well, you couldn't get Shaquille O'Neal. I said, well, how about Lonzo Mourning? He's not bad. How about Mutombo? He's not bad. So going into that year, as you're well aware, I think Irvin Johnson was forced to retire. And so to get to a point where we would have someone to be kind of the gatekeeper in terms of, excuse me, in terms of fan appeal, and also someone that could be the enormous stepping stone to having a championship team again. And that was Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, not Abdul-Jabbar, but Shaquille O'Neal.
Right.
And then during the draft, to get to a point in time to have the money to be able to, the additional money to appeal to Shaquille, where we would have more money to offer him,
Right.
then it was vitally important that we be able to trade.
Peeler and Lynch.
Hold on just 1 second. Vlade Divac.
Oh, Vlade. Okay, Vlade.
And so then in the process of doing this stuff, we're doing this kind of flying by our seat of our pants, because we couldn't talk to any of the free agents at that point in time. So tried like crazy. We'd worked out Kobe 2 times, and it was just, it was evident to me and anyone who had been there and had been involved in the league, this was the most talented player in the draft, period. He was. It was not in vogue to draft shorter players, and he wasn't short. He's on 6'6". But anyone big who had some ability, teams would take those guys. But for some reason, he was pushed down the line. And again, his agent was Arn Tellem, who is a great friend of mine, still is today. And also Joe and Pam Harris. Pam Bryant were also friends. I knew Joe. And during that time, we started talking to them a little bit about, after our workouts that we'd seen him, if we could get him, he would be an enormous piece going forward, because if you were around him, you knew his effervescence of a player, his his enormous talent. But he was 17 years old. I've never seen a player that young be that talented. And also the fact he just loved to play and compete. So, so we had this plan that once we found out this is the route we're going to try to go. And Jerry Buss was very upbeat in the fact he just kept encouraging me, let's do this. Because he knew that what we needed was someone who was going to draw people and have a big personality coming to Los Angeles. So we got into the process of the draft, and we finally found a way to get him at number 13. I did not think there's any way, shape, or form that people could pass this kid. I did not. And New Jersey was going to draft him. They were going to draft him. And Arn and the Bryant family told them that they didn't want him to play near Philadelphia, nor in Philadelphia. So he just kept sliding down the board, and I'm like, gosh, we have a deal.
Yeah.
With late Bob Bass, who was a wonderful man. And everyone complained. Everyone complained, how could you give a starting center up for a 17-year-old kid? Well, there was a 2 parts of this thing, Shaquille O'Neal and him.
Right.
And so I developed a relationship with Shaquille over the phone. We talked sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. And I kept telling him we had better players who would give him a chance to win a championship here in Los Angeles. They did in Orlando. And I truly believed it, that we had better players surrounding him. And I said, just because you know these guys and some of them are friends, if you truly want to win at the highest level, I can assure you this is your best chance. And so finally, he was playing on the Olympic team that year. We finally made a deal. And I went to to sign a contract. It was like supposed to meet right after midnight. And they had the plane that was carrying the team. I think they were working out, I believe, in Orlando. I think that's where they were. I'm not 100%. So he came to Los Angeles. We got this contract. His agent was there, and I was with our attorney, the late Jim Persy. And we get there, and now it's, we thought he'd be there about 12:15. Now it's about 2:30 in the morning. And we were on the 69th floor. And I said, if this guy doesn't get here soon, and I said, I better put a parachute on or I'm going out that window. So all the time and effort had been put into it. And we didn't have very many people involved at all, hardly anyone.
Right.
And so when Shaquille said he'd do it, I said, I have to make another trade. And I said, make sure you tell Jerry Buss that you're coming, okay? We're going to pay you this. And he agreed to come. So we traded 2 players to Vancouver to have enough money to pay him. And then we had made this deal to get Kobe Bryant.
But Jerry, 2 things. Let me go backwards. If the Orlando Magic does not lowball Shaquille O'Neal, they had run some stupid voting thing in the newspaper about should they, or the paper did, should they pay Shaquille O'Neal what he's asking, and the fans said, thumbs down. Had they not lowballed him, I know his agent Leonard Amato wanted him to come out to California,
yes,
out to LA, but would he have stayed?
I really don't know. I will tell you this, that he's one of my favorite people, Pete. He really is, because he never changes. And we had developed an incredible relationship over the phone. And even today, we'll say hello or text each other every once in a while. They had offered him, the real story was they offered him a 2-year deal, I believe, 2 or 3-year deal, when we were offering him a 5-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
And they said the reason, I think the owner met with him, and to my recollection, the owner told him that he didn't know if he wanted to be there. And that's why they offered him. But after they found out that he was leaving,
and they anteed up.
They wanted to go back and revisit it, and they didn't do it. But it was like,
it's crazy, Jerry. The guy took them to the finals, and now you're gonna give him only 2 years. It makes no sense at all. Too late to come back. But as far as Kobe goes, Arn Tellem definitely threatened the Nets and said that, his client would not come and play there if you draft him. And so I asked Kobe about that, maybe at that dinner that I spoke about earlier. Sometime I asked him, I said, well, so what would you have done? Where were you going to go? We're going to go to Europe, go back to Italy and play over there? He said, no. He said, I would have come and played for the Nets. He said, I definitely would have. I said, well, what happened? What do you think would have happened had you come and played for the Nets? He said, John Calipari would still be coaching.
I'm not sure that he would have had as much success there as he did.
Well, whatever. It was a good line anyway. It was a good line.
Well, John and I have talked about it a long time.
Oh, really?
We had Kerry Kittles, who was a great guy, really nice fellow.
Yeah, that's what they drafted
him.
Right.
They drafted him, and it worked out pretty well for us. I'll say that.
You think? So, Jerry, you say you love Jerry Buss, and things were really good. You're winning championships with the Lakers, and then you leave the Lakers. And I've always felt that you were a Laker for life. You might have taken a few years off in between, playing and coaching and whatever. But, you're kind of like Tommy Heinsohn was with the Celtics, Celtic for life. And you left. Why?
Pete, I didn't need to be there anymore.
Why?
Honestly, well, I tell you what,
They weren't listening to you?
I honestly didn't feel like I was wanted. I really didn't. I think that, a lot of changes going on over there in terms of, people being around that hadn't been around before. Everyone thinks that this is something easy to sustain. It's not, because every once in a while you're able to go out and acquire free agents. And I'd like to think we did it on our own with a very small staff. No, Leonard Armato had some very good players, but he wasn't going to direct every player toward us. And that happens today. And if you look at the Lakers today, my goodness, they have one agent has really provided them with a stronghold. But most important thing, and if I were ever going to give any advice to any young person working in the league, the most important thing is to have relationships with the agents. I don't care if you don't like the agent. I don't care if you don't enjoy working with him. That is vital in today's world, to be able to have respect and understand and appreciate what agents do today. And you have more of them around. You have people that are, striving to get involved in this business because they love basketball. And I think a lot of them like to be around athletes. But at that time, it was just really, really, really different. And for me, I didn't feel wanted. And I just felt that.
Didn't feel wanted by who? By Jerry Buss?
No, I don't know who, but I just didn't feel wanted. Pete, I trust my instincts. I've done this a couple times in my life.
Right.
I trust my instincts. And honestly, I thought it was, I don't know if they would have offered me another contract. And I don't mean that in a divisive way, because sometimes, you stay too long at the fair. I would rather leave anything in my life where I did not feel wanted. And it was nothing to do with, everyone makes Phil Jackson part of Phil Jackson. It really wasn't. He was just different. Okay. He was different. I didn't have a relationship with him, which was fine. But
well, let me stop you there. How's that possible? Because I was kind of involved in getting you in touch with Phil Jackson's agent at the time, Musburger. How can, and this happens all the time, how can a general manager or president hire somebody as a coach, and then suddenly once the guy's hired, you're not as smart anymore? You're not.
Well, I like Pete. Honestly, I like working relationships with coaches, and Phil was quiet, so he really was quiet. And for the first, oh my goodness, for a while there, we did things together at night. And Bill Bradley was running for president. We went to a couple things for him, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It just, as I say, when I go to practice, I go to practice to watch. I don't go there I never met with coaches about who to play. The only thing I'd ever say to a coach, who would you like for me to try to acquire if we need one player that you like, that can help us? That was the only thing I talked about, coach. I never had meetings with them. I never set into a meeting with coaches and players. I think it's not a general manager's job. And if I were a coach, I would be offended.
Right.
I wouldn't want one in there. I don't care who he is. And we have a number of general managers do that today, and I think it's wrong.
Were you offended? Were you offended big time when you went into the locker room and Phil asked you to leave the locker room?
Well, it wasn't exactly asked me to leave. It was after the game. I used to never go in a game. For the game, I might go in, wish everyone well, and leave. No interaction, say hello to coach, good luck tonight, coach, and leave. And after the game, he wasn't very happy with the performance. And I would always go into a back room, and I thought he was done. And I walked in there, and the language wasn't very good, but never went back in the locker room again.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, as I say, when you don't feel welcome, you don't feel welcome.
Right. Okay.
But certainly, I had great respect for him. We made him the highest paid coach. It was my idea. to sell Jerry Buss on it, and it worked, and we won. So he was
Right.
more important than me being around.
All right,
But, as I say, I just
not a hard sell though, Jerry. I mean, he won 3 championships, but whatever. Let me just switch gears a little bit. I don't want to take it out of context, but now you're with the Warriors as a consultant, and you're involved there. And the word out from the Bay Area media is that Mark Jackson won't allow you at practices.
oh gosh, no.
Well, I know I called you about it and asked you about it, and you said that's not true. And I asked you at the time, did any other media person from that area ever call you? You said no. To this day, they still say Mark Jackson wouldn't allow Jerry West at his practices.
That is an absolute lie. Mark Jackson and I talk frequently. Okay.
Right.
I've been trying to help him get a job in the NBA.
I know that, Jerry. Yeah.
And do you think I would do something like that if that would have happened? No, not true at all.
I know that, but
Right.
I'm telling you, it's still circulating. It's an
No, I told
amazing
you,
thing.
only time I would go to practice if I were up there for a game or the Warriors would have me doing something. That's the only time I would even go. Pete, I don't participate in anything with coaches. If coaches want to talk about something or ask something, what do you think about this player, that player? Fine. I never would make a suggestion unless somebody would ask me that
I
question.
know you love to go to practices. We spoke last week, and you were on the way to the Clipper practice, and
Right.
I said that you probably lead the league in attending and participating in practices. And you said, "No, Iverson does." No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Well, I enjoy, Pete. I really do enjoy. I guess it's, as I say, I mentioned earlier, find something you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Right.
I enjoy being around and watching players and coaches prepare for games. What are they trying to do a little bit different? Are they doing things differently when they're playing different teams? I sort of like to know that before I go to the game, what you can look for, what you can anticipate. It's just almost part of being a player again, to just want to know what coaches are trying to do. I don't participate, period.
You gave me a great reason the other day, or a great thing about you, that you love about the ball. What did you say?
The bouncing of a ball in a gym. I remember a lot of times in the summer at West Virginia University when it was hot and no air conditioning in the gym. I used to go down there and there'd be no one there. And just there's something about the rhythm of a ball on the floor. And there is a rhythm to it. When there's not a rhythm to it, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
And it's just been part of my life forever. And, I've had some incredible relationships with people that I've known through the game. Pete, I don't hate anybody. Okay, I don't. I respect people for performance. I respect people for how they treat people. I don't hate anybody, but there's certain things I'm sensitive to. And if I don't feel wanted, I'm gone, period.
Jerry, would you have come back to be part of the Lakers as a consultant, a consigliere, whatever, when Magic was hired? Would you have come back and been his right-hand man had they asked you?
They were never going to ask me, Pete.
Why?
They're just never going to ask me.
Would you have come back had they asked you?
I don't think so, Pete. It would have been difficult. A lot of water passes under the bridge, and I see, and it's not. I saw the other day who Jeannie Buss is. Made a statement that the 5 most important Lakers.
Yes.
One of the most offensive things I've ever heard in my life. Really offensive.
I was going to ask you about it. Okay, so the five she named were Kareem, Magic, Kobe, LeBron, and Phil Jackson.
Right. Well, let's put it this way. I was there a lot of times and had a lot of success, and would be curious to know why if they would have had that success if I hadn't been there. And we had Pete, we had a little small staff, and I don't ever take credit for stuff. I don't. But when I was around, maybe I was just a good luck charm, okay? But I do know that when this thing fell apart, there was a lot of years that they weren't very good.
Well, Jerry, let me be frank. I know you want to cut in, but I think in listening to that, what she said, I think she was caught off guard, just in her defense a little bit, because she left off Magic too. And then they said, yeah, well, you didn't say Magic. Oh yeah, well, Magic should be no more. So I believe she was just a little harried there. So
I don't believe it for a second.
What's that?
I don't believe it for a second, Pete.
Okay, all right.
I would like to kind of back up the bus for just a minute and talk about and not want to gloss over the success that Jerry had in Memphis. With certainly it seemed to be an odd choice at the time, bringing Hubie Brown back, and what led to that, and for a team that had never been much of anything to get to the playoffs, 3 years in a row,
yes,
in that market, and made the team relevant.
Well, there's a lot of people that you're around that are coaches that obviously you learn from other coaches. Some people have a better way of presenting it. It's like a class. People can talk about the same subject if you're a student. And I'll never forget, I had an English literature class. And English literature, for me, a kid going to college at West Virginia University, I was scratching my head. And my God, it's unheard of for me to want to go to an English literature class. But we had a teacher that just had this appeal. Mm-hmm. I couldn't wait to go to his classes. I could not wait. And probably the most fun of any classes I've ever had. And everyone loved this guy. And I had another one. I went in there. I couldn't wait to get out of class. Couldn't wait to get out of class. It did not have that appeal. But you have certain people that present things to you in a different way. And Hubie Brown is the best clinician I have ever seen in my life. He just so organized. I mean, there's nothing that he misses in a game as a coach, nothing. And I think probably maybe the happiest I've ever been for a person was Hubie Brown when he won Coach of the Year, won 50 games with the Memphis team. That team was in Vancouver for like 13 years or something like that. The most games they won were 23. My first year in Memphis, we won, I think, 29. And I said, I think we're good enough if we get the right coach to organize this coach and instill discipline that this team can be pretty good. I'll never forget that night, first playoff game. Everything in the building was sold out. They presented Hubie with the Coach of the Year award, and everyone had white on and everything. Even thinking about today, it gives me a great feeling. He did an unbelievable job.
And unfortunately, he got sick and he ended up leaving.
Well, on a Thanksgiving Day, I get a call and he says, I just don't think I can do this anymore. And it was probably one of the most disappointing days ever, because it was during the season and we just really started to pick it up again, and he's gone. And, it's right in the middle of the season. You could do something about it over the course of the summer, but he just did an unbelievable job. He made these players believe, but instead of seeing half-hearted efforts, you didn't see that anymore. His efforts of this team were unbelievable. Right. And I was so proud of him, so happy for him, because, people, and particularly in the media, they can write all kinds of things that are just not true. And even some of the things I've said here today, it was just, when talking about the Lakers, it's time for me to go.
Right.
And why should I put them in a difficult position? Or why should I feel unhappy? I wanted to do it on my terms. And that was the one time that maybe I was most shocked in my life that Hubie, at that point in time, walked away. If it was after the season was over, I would have completely understood it.
Right, right. Jerry, let's go to your current job with the Clippers. Okay. I don't understand. I'm not reading the papers in LA, at all, really. But I don't think there was enough made of the fact that the Clippers allowed Harrell to just walk away from the team as a free agent during the summer after he'd been the sixth, seventh best man in the NBA, and then you trade Lou Williams, who was the sixth man almost every year of his career. In the span of months. What happened that those two guys who were so important to the Clippers, why were they allowed to go? Well,
Well,
one was traded.
First of all, Pete, I don't make any decisions. Okay, I don't.
Well, you might know something.
No, I have a voice, but I don't make final decisions on anything. And I'm not shy with my voice, by the way. If I really feel something, I feel something. But I think in any situation, we have a new coach. Doc was not there anymore. And the organization, somewhere along the way, has to look at the numbers. And I'm talking about players' salaries. Even though Steve Ballmer is by far the richest owner and a great guy, reminds me very, very much of Jerry Buss, except that he is, so much more successful and people always measure success by financial. And when you look at businessmen, he is really unique. And being around him is like a breath of fresh air. It's very much like Jerry Buss. I just loved being around Steve, but I was much closer, did a lot more things with Jerry, but because Steve lives up in the state of Washington. And but anyway, during that period of time, they were trying to do a lot of different things. And in the course of doing a lot of different things, they're going to look at all options. But I think the reason that Lou was moved was the fact that we needed somebody that could get this team into an offense. And Rajon Rondo, if you watch him play, Pete, he's a genius.
No, I love Rondo. I've told him to his face.
He's been and Lou Williams, I'm telling you, was one of my favorite people. I just loved him.
Right.
But Rondo he's been really good for this team. He has, even though we're not, we've played 3 games in a row where our effort hasn't been the best. This is a team that's got talent. It's this talented team. As far as Montrez, I don't even know if they got to the point where other teams were trying to sign him, and he eventually ends up with the Clippers. With the
Lakers. Yeah, with the Lakers. Yeah, so he walks across the court and goes to another locker room. Hold on a second here.
Well, he's still, something again. He was one of my favorites too. I just loved his effort every night. They brought in Serge Ibaka, who's bigger. Obviously, he's been on part of a championship team, and he's during the playoff. Smaller players are much more difficult to play because the game's tightened up, the defense is tightened up, and Montrez is tireless energy. He never stops playing. Well, and again, that's what I like in players. I like players that love to compete. But the reality is, we have Serge Ibaka instead of Montrezl Harrell.
Mm-hmm. Jerry, let me throw a few names at you, okay? As we wind it down, okay? Elgin, we've talked about him at length. Give me your thoughts on Elgin's passing. Were you the person who introduced him or got him the job with Donald Sterling? Did you have anything to do with that?
Oh my goodness.
Should I bring up his name at all? Or am I allowed to? Or?
Well, as I say, Elgin was someone that that I was so close to. The way he interacted with me, the way I interacted with him. He was like, many ways, a big brother. I used to go out and watch him in practice. I'd watch some things he did, and I learned an awful lot from how he conducted himself with the writers. Not controversial. I'd like to think I'm not controversial. I'm just honest. And the stuff we shared together, the talks, I'm just fresh out of college, and everyone had to go to school for 4 years, Pete. And after games, you never went to sleep, and you could play the next night in a different city, the night after that, a different city. But just to hear him talk and how fun he was, but also the seriousness of some of our conversation. And I'd always be in a room that very rarely there would be one white guy, me, and probably 4 black guys playing cards. And the conversations that we had, I just felt such a camaraderie with those guys because I didn't play with any minorities when I was in college, against, but not. And I never had a black roommate. I mean, I never had a white roommate when I was a player. I didn't want one. I just felt it was a great learning experience for me, and different conversations, things that they'd seen to their friends, things they had experienced that were god awful. It was a great learning experience for me personally. But as a player, he was almost like king-like on the basketball court. You could see him have his hands on his hip, and he was like looking over his domain. And I still have a picture of Bill Russell with the same thing, with his hand in hip. He looked and acted regal. Both of them did. They had a special just look about them. If you ever seen a racehorse that's retired, if you see them out in the pasture and everything, and I'm certainly not comparing a person to a racehorse, but these horses know they're special. They know they're special. They'll come up to the fence and they'll look at you, and they've gotten massive after they're retired.
Yeah.
He was special.
Right.
He was special. And only because of the way my brain thinks, I do look at people like that. I do think they're special people. Seen a lot of them in this league.
Right.
A lot of them I'd like to know better, because to me, again, anything I can learn about what makes this world go around, what makes it a better place, how can we make it a better place? I want to hear from those people. And if you're a teammate, they're going to open up to you. Some people are so closeted in how they interact with people of a different race. We're all the same, Pete, and the way people treat people in this country is disgusting. I'm embarrassed at some of the things I see that go on, and sometimes you'd like to feel like you can help make a difference. I just see awful times right now, and killing of people. There has to be a better way. It's disgusting, to be honest with you.
Jerry, regarding Elgin, as far as his legacy is concerned, it just amazed me that not until he died did he get the recognition he's been lacking for 20, 30 years. It's like people suddenly discovered how great Elgin was. So to me, that was sinful all these years that happened. And then I think working for Donald Sterling hurt his legacy because for obvious reasons.
Well, Pete, you're right. I used to say all the time, because he was, when he retired, no one really kept any archives to this day. You couldn't And you go watch some of these films, and they look like they're in slow motion, almost like those old tick, 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 tick things that they have. And I will tell you, and for all basketball fans, this was one truly unique, incredible player. His instincts on the court, offensive rebound, he had a great nose for the ball. And remember earlier, I talked about instincts, okay? He had those. And he had magnificent hands. He could, he knew how to shoot the ball off the board. He was like watching a great pool player banking shots and putting it over here to be in line for another one. How he could shoot a shot and pick it and get the rebound, look like almost passing to himself. A unique skill,
Yeah.
But again, as a teammate, that was just being around him. Oh my gosh, funny, clever. He gave me so many nicknames, and like Zeke from Cabin Creek. And
He gave you that?
Yeah, I hated that.
He did.
I hated that word. I hated that word. Okay, I hated it because people make fun of people from West Virginia. Tweety Bird because of my voice.
Oh, right.
Twang.
Jerry, you think you got it bad. You know what Hubie nicknamed me? The Viper. I mean, come on. You have to live with the Viper.
Yeah.
Kobe and I used to argue all the time about who was more poisonous, whose nickname, the Black Mamba or the Viper.
Well, Pete, no, there's another one I used to kid him about.
What?
I said, that in this world, there's an animal that kills every black viper. I mean, every mongoose, every black viper. It's called the mongoose.
The mongoose, yeah.
The black mamba never wins a battle against the mongoose.
That's true.
And that's true. And I know that I was a mongoose. I'm going to get you, okay? And again, Kobe was fun. And when you got him out of the environment of, when preparing for a game, he was a lot of fun too. But
Jerry, how did your relationship end with him? I mean, I've been hearing a little bit about, that it just wasn't that good for whatever reasons. You can tell me if it's not true, but I thought that, when you were doing the book, that he was maybe the only person who wouldn't agree to be interviewed.
Well, it was because of his agent, Rob Pelinka. It wasn't because of him. Kobe would have done it.
What happened?
Well, Rob Pelinka asked the writer, he said, submit a list of questions and we'll supply the answers back. And I told him, no, we can do without. So, but that was fine. If somebody doesn't want to participate, in the book was not controversial. It was just about my life and some of my relationships with some of the players that I had been involved with. But his agent did not want to.
Do you think Kobe knew that? You think he was aware that was happening?
I don't know that. I never even asked. I never bothered to ask, which is fine. And again, Pete, if someone doesn't want to do it, that's fine. I don't have any problem with it. It's, if people ask me to do things, if something that I think is going to be critical about someone that I like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not. I'm not built that way.
But if it's somebody who brought you into their family at number 13, they were the center for you. I think I'd do just about anything for them.
Life turned out to be pretty good for him. Let's put it that way, except that horrible, tragic Sunday day. It was horrible.
Right. Jerry, is there any trade that you're sorry you didn't make?
That I didn't make?
That you did not make. Is there any trade that you could have made and didn't for whatever reason that you look back?
Well, as I say, it depends on what owner you had.
Okay.
We could have gotten Dominique Wilkins, and we could have also gotten Julius Erving. And the then owner would not spend the money to do it.
That was Jack Kent Cooke?
Yes. Yes.
Well, he was cheap in 7 languages. He was cheap with you. He was cheap. Explain what happened with both those guys. It was
there was the ABA. Remember, they were kind of being out there, and the respective team could claim them. And Utah drafted Dominique and they didn't have enough money, or they didn't, for whatever reason, we could have gotten him for $3 million. And I said to him, we had James Worthy, we drafted James Worthy there. And the only two players in that draft that Terry Cummings was the other one. But to me, Terry wasn't a player for this team, but those two were. And can you imagine having both of those guys on your team? Oh, my gosh. I told Mr. Cook that Dominique Wilkins was one of he and Julius Erving may be the most two exciting players outside of Michael Jordan I've ever seen. The way they played the game, the flair that they played the game. And this is why people come out and see players. They want to see these freakish athletes that we see in the NBA. But these guys had skill. Oh, my gosh. You're talking about a three-wing circus with him, James Worthy running on the wing. Can you imagine that with Irvin Johnson throwing the ball? Oh, my God.
No, I can't. Atlanta only gave up $1 million and John Drew to get him. But it saved their franchise. Saved the Hawks.
I know.
And Utah was saved. They need the money.
They had Julius Erving, same way, for $3 million. Forget what it was. But Utah, we could have traded Utah for him. And we could have gotten Julius Erving for money too. And
Julius was probably the $3 million, because that's what Philadelphia gave up to get him, $3 million, and then gave him the $3 million contract.
Well, that was a smart move. All the people he put in seats, he earned his salary, whatever he made. He probably didn't get enough, to be honest with you.
All the people he brought out of seats.
I know, that's right. Well, one of the things that I would say to you, Pete, and anyone who's watching, some of these players are not only great players, but Pete, the one element that no one ever talks about: how many people will want to come and see this guy play?
Right.
They are the ones who make these franchises successful, because they draw people. They draw people.
Who would you go to see play? Who would you pay to go see? I know you might get in free anyway, but who would you pay to go see?
Today in this league?
Today, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Obviously, LeBron James. I've always liked, I think Giannis, because of the joy he plays the game. I enjoy his efforts every night. Honestly, I like to watch Joel Embiid play. He's got a playful side to him, but he's really good. My goodness.
Let me throw a name out there.
Chris Paul.
Curry.
Who?
Curry.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I got a chance when I was involved with the Warriors to see him play a lot.
Right.
People
I pay to see Curry play.
Who's that?
I pay to see Curry play.
Oh, for sure. There's only a few.
Right.
And when you watch people play in this league, I tell you who's, to me, this year has been the best I have seen him in a number of years. It's Chris Paul. Right. People talk about most valuable players. I love to watch Jokic play myself, because you look at him and look like he's stumbling around all over the place. This guy is so skilled, and his hands. Okay.
Yeah.
I think in your lifetime, you've seen a lot of players that, if somebody had a newborn baby and you handed it to him, there's certain people you would not hand that baby to. Just drop it. Right. Jokic is not going to drop anyone, and Kawhi Leonard's not going to drop anyone.
Right.
But there are certain people that resonate with me, and there's a lot of people out there that I know I'm going to miss someone along the way.
I know.
And there's other players that you go see or want to go see for the teams. And some teams, there's not anyone I'd want to see play, and they might have good teams.
Another one that I miss, he's been hurt for so long, is Klay Thompson. And then you've got Durant. Who doesn't like watching him play?
Oh my goodness. I just going to say those two, but
and Kyrie and Harden and
oh my gosh. Kevin Durant scores easier than anyone I can ever see. He never gets the credit. Never. Right. This guy is not a scorer. He's a basketball player.
Right.
James Harden is a basketball player.
Right.
But you know why? Because they pass, they move the ball, they make people better.
Right.
Kevin, I saw the other night what he's got 42 points and it's got like what 19 shots or 18 shots, something like that.
Right.
Come on. No one can guard him. You cannot guard this guy. You
Right.
cannot guard him. And then Kyrie around the basket, he might finish better than anyone. And this guy is just a magician.
Yeah.
And James Harden, oh my gosh. He's a brilliant player. He has a brilliant mind to play the game. And a lot of people, for some reason, they don't resonate with this guy. Are you kidding me?
Right.
He's a great, great player.
All right, I'm going to end it on this note.
Yeah.
So Michael Jordan was quoted in a book, one of his books, that the player that he would have loved to have played against in his prime, in both their primes, is you. Did you know that?
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
Well, Michael and I, as I say, Michael, I don't like to be a name dropper, but Michael is probably I don't know how you could find a more real athlete than him. I don't. He doesn't change. He still is really fun to be around. I see him every once in a while. And being around him is like being around a normal guy. He really is. And I don't know anyone, unless they would be envious of him, that could be jealous of him. I don't. I really don't. He is just absolutely the best of the best. And flattering he would say that.
But who would have won? Who would have won, Jerry?
I wouldn't have won, that's for sure. But no
Really?
one won anyway.
I think Oscar feels he would have won.
Well, I love Oscar, but I love Oscar, but no, he's
all right. Okay.
Michael is just, as I say, watching him and LeBron James, they're probably the two most unique players I've ever seen. And that's not the detriment of all the other great players, but
right.
LeBron's size, his brain, his leadership ability have been amazing, absolutely amazing. And when I watch him, and I watch some of the things he does for his size, and to imagine that he is still relevant at this age, more than relevant at this age of his life, because he puts the effort in. He's become a much better shooter. He's gotten better every year, and great players do that. Now, maybe they lose a little bit physically, but you don't see it because they add other elements to their game that make them more complete, and they're almost timeless. Some of these guys are. LeBron James, watching him this year, he's had this ankle sprain, which is first time he's really ever missed any significant time. But I watch him play, and I marvel at how he plays. And Kevin, as I say, I love Kevin. Okay, he's a great guy, not selfish. He could, as I say, he can carry a team against anyone. I don't care who they are.
Well, I'm going to end it on this note, Jerry. Jordan swears he's, competitive, up for every challenge, but he doesn't want to do this podcast either. So,
Peter, let me interject two things very quickly. One, I know it's probably 28 days or so, 27 days early, but a happy 83rd birthday to you, sir.
There you go.
And what I found incredible, many things fascinating, but the number that cries out to me is this is NBA year number 75. And save for those 3 years, I guess, immediately after you had retired, you've been involved in the league for 61 of the 75 years. Have you stopped to think about that?
Well, it's pretty amazing. And as I say, I'm obviously getting to the end of the road, but I will say this, that I've enjoyed so many people, getting to know people, more importantly, let people know who you are. And as I say, I don't really, people that sometimes you have people that you're more fond of than others because you really don't know them. And I say sometimes that people don't want to know you because they they don't know you. They see that maybe they think you're arrogant, you're something else, but I don't think people can survive anything unless you're yourself. Be honest. The people you're with. I'd say I love basketball players. Some of them are built a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, they grow up pursuing a dream, and many of them have walked away unbelievably successful, and they give back. And the ones that give back, those are the ones I'm most appreciative of.
Well, Jerry, you've been saying you're going to you're near the end of the line for about 20 years. I've been talking to you, and so I don't believe there is an end of the line. And so hopefully we can do this again. I really appreciate listening to you and your willingness to answer all questions.
Well, thank you. Great to spend time with you, and continue. Good luck, Pete.
Okay, you take
bye-bye.
You got it.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Hoop du Jour with me, Peter Vecsey, presented by the National Basketball Retired Players Association. You can listen to all Hoop du Jour interviews by searching Legends Studios, wherever you get your podcasts.